good evening, and welcome. It is time once again for CU Immigration here on WRFU-LP, Urbana, 104.5 FM. I will be your host for this evening. My name is Mr. Garza, and I'm here to let you know that WRFU is an open forum for the Urbana-Champaign community. Views expressed are those of the speakers, yes they are, and are not intended to represent WRFU, UCIMC, Urbana Socialist Forum, or, as we like to say on this show, UPTV. These views are our own, and by our, in this instance, I mean myself and anyone whose essay, editorial, commentary, whatever I happen to read, because they are expressing their views, and so it's not my view necessarily. I'm just reading something. Anyway, wasn't here last week. Yeah, well, okay. It happens. Sometimes I get busy. Can't do it all the time, and or I don't necessarily. Well, it's not that I don't have something to say. It's just that I don't have enough. I don't have a clear vision of what I want to talk about. And indeed, I often don't. When I start talking, I just start talking and I see what comes out. And I hope it's something useful to you. I far prefer when I have guests. And, but, it's not always easy to find people to go on the radio because people get shy. Oh, I'm just shy. So yeah, no, I'm not making fun of shy people. It sounds like it, but I am shy. I'm a shy person. But I've learned that if you're shy, I mean, if you're one of these people who's like internet, texting is easier than talking, and internet sending email is easier than being in person and all that sort of thing. Radio is designed for you, because here you're having a conversation with all sorts of people. It's like public speaking, giving a speech, only you can't see the audience. They're invisible. It's perfect. So it's like I strongly suggest, I strongly urge, however you want to put that, anyone who feels like, wow, I've just, I've got lots to say. I'm really opinionated. I really think hard about a lot of things, and I have all these ideas, but I'm shy, and I could never get up and give a speech or something like that. Get your own radio show or come on and be a guest on the radio. It's perfect. Giving a speech to people around the world, and you don't have to see them. You don't have to see them looking at you. They're invisible. It's just you alone in a room with a microphone, and what could be easier than that? So I suggest it. That's all I'm saying. This is WRFU is a community radio station. There are many hours during the day when we could be having programs on of some sort, and you too can have your own show. It's simple. You just join the IMC, Independent Media Center. Take a little training so you know how these knobs and things work and what they're for and all that sort of thing. You study up on your FCC rules so you know I can say this, but I can't say that. So it's like you learn the difference between swearing and... Wait, what is it? Swearing and... Not swearing and cussing? No. There's two different versions. Like obscenity and indecency. That's what it is. You learn the difference between those two things. And I'm not going to tell you what it is now, but you would learn that. So you would know, I can be indecent after 10 p.m., but I can't be obscene ever. It's interesting. Interesting stuff. Interesting rules. But, they're not too restrictive. And it's not like, Big Brother is looking over your shoulder and listening to every word you say and saying, oh, I don't know about that. We can't have that kind of thing. Oh, excuse me. Something about this studio makes me yawn. Anyway, just a brief suggestion that maybe you should get your own radio show. So anyway, this show, as you know, as you may know, as you might know, is an outreach of the CU Immigration Forum. We call it CU Immigration. We're not a forum here. It's just a radio show, so we drop the forum part. But we're here to talk to you and to share things and to express things to you about immigration. And one of the ways I like to do that on this show is to try to humanize the topic a little bit. So sometimes I'll just have immigrants on and let them talk about whatever. Because we don't always have to be talking technical details about immigration all the time, you know. I think it's also important and interesting to just hear about the experience of the immigrant, because immigrants are people. They go to a new place, they start a new life. That's what immigration is. People moving from place to place. And it's no more mysterious than that. Really. But it seems mysterious to people because it is used as a political tool. And I guess as long as we're talking politics, how's that for a segue? I should mention that today is Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day. We're celebrating the accomplishments of that great person today. And so in honor of that, I thought I would read this. It is entitled, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and the Intersection of Immigration and Civil Rights. Thought that was interesting. I looked earlier, and if Dr. King said much about immigrants, it's hard to find. I couldn't find much. But this should be interesting to see how this person connects this stuff up. So I will begin reading. Today we celebrate the life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., a man whose dream of equality and human rights changed the course of history. His legacy will be remembered this week by people of colors and creeds who still believe in the American dream and who continue to fight for equality, civil rights, and the basic human dignity they deserve. Over the weekend, thousands of human rights activists took to the street in Phoenix, Arizona to march for civil rights and for long overdue federal action on immigration. So what is the link between immigration and civil rights? In a recent editorial, Reverend Harvey Clemens Jr., the pastor of Pleasant Hill Baptist Church in Houston, connects Dr. King's fight for equality with the struggle many immigrants face today. Immigration is about human dignity and the nobility of parents of different tribes and nations facing the risk of coming to a foreign land, a land of opportunity, to work for a better tomorrow for their children. Dr. King invoked the truth being that all humans ought to be treated with a certain dignity. It would be natural for us to look to him as an example for fighting for a just cause. Gerald Lenoir, director of the Black Alliance for Just Immigration, also draws parallels between the struggles of African Americans and the struggles of recent immigrants. Even some of the migration experiences of African Americans coming from the South, leaving conditions of economic injustice and terrorism for both legal authorities and groups like the Ku Klux Klan, we see that same kind of movement in people across borders. Leaders within the civil rights movement have long been outspoken supporters of immigration reform, especially when it comes to speaking out against broken immigration enforcement policies and racial profiling. Last March, House Judiciary Chair John Conyers, Maricopa County Supervisor Mary Rose Wilcox, as well as a bevy of civil rights leaders, presented a petition to the Department of Justice and Homeland Security signed by more than 38,000 Arizona residents calling for an investigation of Maricopa County Sheriff Joe Arpaio, a man whose abuse of power racial profiling, and egregious immigration enforcement tactics have earned him numerous lawsuits, an FBI investigation, and a summons to appear before a grand jury. At a press conference introducing the petition, Congressman Conyers called for unity in the fight to end racial profiling. We think, in a lot of ways, our Hispanic brothers and sisters are becoming the new targets of discrimination and profiling that used to occur to African Americans. We're saying it together, African Americans, Hispanic Americans, and everyone else. No more racial profiling. Similarly, Reverend Al Sharpton, also an outspoken advocate in the fight to end racial profiling, noted that defending civil rights should be an everybody issue. We need to stop comparing disparities and start finding solutions. It is imperative for the African American community to stand together with the Latino community, and for the Latino community to stand with the Asian community. You cannot have human rights for some. We need it for all. We must stand together with all our brothers and sisters against this national outrage. A recent poll conducted by the Pew Research Center reveals that 1 year after the election of President Barack Obama, black optimism about America has surged, while Hispanics have become more skeptical about race relations. According to the poll, Hispanics are now seen as the ethnic group facing the most discrimination, which is not surprising, as America's Voice blogger Jackie Maherda says, given the racially charged immigration rhetoric that flows from talk radio to nightly news to the halls of Congress. Now more than ever, it's important to remember Dr. King's message that all men are created equal, not just for Hispanics and African Americans, but for all people who come to this country in search of the American dream. So it's interesting that the American dream is how can I put this? It's like a point around which so many different points of view seem to revolve. Maybe it's like not a milestone, but a marking point, I guess, for a certain kind of idea. A landmark. There you go. That would be a good way to describe it. It's a landmark. When you're trying to point the way toward the idea of America, the idea of the U.S., the United States of America. Like, what is it that people imagine about this place? And that's something maybe I should ask. I kind of avoid promoting the idea of the American dream because I don't really believe that it's as unique a concept as people like to claim it is. But maybe it's another way of saying, what's the American identity, or what do you imagine? What is it, your imagination of the American identity? And I guess that would be the American dream. Like, what is it you think can happen here, or you think can be had here by somebody? So when you mobilize that term, you bring, it's got a lot of baggage that comes with it. Out of history, of propaganda, of imagination. But I think because the U.S. is so young as far as nations of the world go, that it's still in the formative stage in terms of what people think it could be. It is in the process of becoming. You have countries like Germany and Russia and China and I don't know, Saudi Arabia, all these places. They've been around for a long, long time, and they have histories even before they were called whatever their current name is. Iran now, Persia at one time, going back. So there's, even with a different name, there's still this immense history behind a lot of places. Excuse me. And so to a certain extent, some of these places are kind of viewed, their identity is as much a past glory as a future promise, if you want to think about it that way. But the U.S. is still young enough that it's mostly seen as something that's going to be. It's in the process of being made. It's starting to ossify to a certain extent. It's starting to become solid, and people say, well, you even have people saying, well, America's not what it used to be. There are people looking to it now as almost a thing in the past, but it's still in that process. It's still moving. And so I guess the American dream, whatever that is to you or for you, is an interesting concept to kind of unpack, because it says a lot about what you think this place could be or should be. And it's pretty clear what Dr. King believed about the American dream, because he was coming from a very specific place of saying, okay, here's what America promises to you. Here's how it, offers it to you. But I represent people that are being kept out of that, who can't have those things, who are walking side by side with you into the future, but are barred from sharing those opportunities with you. And in that sense, I think it does make sense to talk about Dr. King's dream for the people that he represented, and the problems that immigrants are facing these days, because it is similar. If you think in particular, a lot is said about different kinds of immigrants who came here and how they came here, but no one is more of an example of the unfairness of the system, the arbitrariness of the system, than the dreamers, I would say. Because in them you have someone who, for virtually their whole life, if not every moment after they were born, at least most of their formative years and moving forward from that, they're as much a part of this country as anyone else. Give or take a few years when they started out in some other country and then came here. But they were brought here. They didn't come here. It wasn't like something they chose to do themselves. It was just, they were brought along with their families, and then they were here, and then they grew up here. So I think everybody likes to focus on them because they are the perfect example of just how wrong our system is and how completely in need of fixing it is. But they're also a perfect example of how the civil rights movement and immigration do intersect in a serious way, because there's nothing you can say against them except that they happen to be born somewhere else. It's a statistical thing. It's something on a list somewhere, and okay, give me your statistics. So you're 5 feet whatever, and you weigh X number of pounds, all those things. We all have just statistics, things that you can say about us. The one thing that you can say about them that somehow becomes bigger than all the rest is their country of origin. Otherwise, they're no different from anybody else. And so the civil rights rhetoric definitely applies to them, because they are, as Dr. King's constituency was, walking side by side into the future with people from, who the natural inheritors of the American dream, let's say, or the intended recipients of the American dream. I'm trying not to racialize this, but and yet they are excluded from it for a completely arbitrary reason. In Dr. King's case, he was speaking up for the African American people primarily, although he was for poor people and marginalized people everywhere. But his primary focus was the African American community. He was saying, look, we work with you. We live next to you. We share the same hopes and dreams and needs and wants, and yet you have a clear path to those things and we do not. And that's not right. And that idea right there absolutely holds true for the Dreamers, and I would argue that it for immigrants generally, but to differing degrees and in different ways, because obviously there are people that come here for all sorts of different reasons. Some people just come here to work, and they don't really want to stay or become Americans. They just want to get a job and do something. Some people come here because it seems safer to them than where they're coming from. And some people come here just to go to school and then they want to leave, or just to do this or that. There's any number of reasons why people might come here. But by and large, I would say undocumented persons, and in particular Dreamers, are in the position of being locked out of, quote unquote, the American dream, for arbitrary reasons. And I think that it definitely applies that's the wrong way of putting it. It definitely fits with the civil rights agenda to say these people, there's no reason that they should not have the same opportunities as everyone else has. There just isn't. So on that note, where did it go? Sorry, I'm trying to look up something here that I noticed earlier. This is from the Dallas News, and it's entitled, "If DACA Immigration Program Ends, Texas Will Lose." And it reads as follows. In the weeks following the results of the 2016 election, the immigrant community has felt the uncertainty of the future like never before. President-elect Trump has made it clear that he intends to make curbing unauthorized immigration a top priority of his administration, including his promise to repeal President Obama's executive action, such as the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program. Yet in his blanket protectionist approach to immigration, President Trump ignores that pushing the young dreamers who benefit from DACA out of the workforce and exposing them to the threat of deportation would have a serious social and economic toll on Texas and the rest of the country. If Donald Trump does indeed remove Texas's 120,000 DACA recipients from the workforce, the Texas economy would lose $6.1 billion annually, according to the Center for American Progress. And the overnight loss of services provided by 100,000 workers would create serious problems here. Additionally, repeal would drastically decrease consumer purchasing power. The Center for American Progress also calculates that almost 55% of dreamers own vehicles, and more than 10% of them have purchased homes. If they are removed from the workforce, they may no longer be able to pay taxes, use their bank accounts, or pay back loans for mortgages, cars, and higher education. This makes for a troubling economic forecast, but the social consequences of failing to protect dreamers are perhaps even more alarming. For example, one of my constituents, Eric Borges, is a 27-year-old DACA recipient and is set to lose his way of life if the work authorization program is discontinued. Borges's mother brought him to the United States at the age of 2 in search of better opportunities, and she decided to stay to provide his U.S. citizen sister with Down syndrome with the medical care she requires to live a full life. Despite calling the U.S. home, Borges was unaware of his undocumented status until he asked his mother for help applying for his driver's license. Borges went on to earn a degree in systems engineering from Southern Methodist University, but without the legal ability to work, he was unable to take advantage of his education. Since the enactment of DACA, Borges has been able to fully participate in the workforce, make payments on his car, pay his rent, and purchase goods and services that stimulate our economy. Borges represents the hard work, determination, and drive that dreamers bring to our communities. I am proud to represent him, as well as the other young immigrant constituents in my district. As the country anxiously awaits to see what President-elect Trump's promises he intends to actually keep during his presidency, I am reminded that we cannot turn our backs on the immigrants who work alongside us, worship in our churches, and attend our schools. This is why on Saturday, January 28th in Dallas, I am hosting a DACA Summit, an immigration town hall to prepare the immigrant community for the uncertain days ahead, and to offer an opportunity to showcase how DACA has changed the life of young aspiring Americans. I hope that a public forum will once again highlight the high stakes Texas faces if young immigrants who hold our values in their hearts are once again pushed to the shadows and removed from our economic fabric. This was written by Mark Vesey, a member of Congress. And there you see the mobilization of the rhetoric of the American dream. He said, who hold our values in their hearts. You know, that's that idea. But he's very right about this. I know DACA recipients who are working, who have families, and who are full participants in their community, even going above and beyond what most people do. If you think of the average person in the community, they go to work, they participate in a few events, they might go to a parade once in a while, they vote, but otherwise they're pretty much, they live in their, they travel in their small personal circle, and that's about it. But I know DACA recipients who are out there really working to affect change in their communities, to improve their communities, to improve the conditions. And these people are vital forces, and they're able to do this because of that status. And let us remember, while we're considering this, because I can hear somebody thinking, yeah, but it was one of those, unauthorized presidential, I don't know, not unauthorized, that's the wrong word, but,